Hey Emma,
Yes, Madelyn.
what do you call it when you're having a fun time playing a popular multiplayer space murder mystery game, but you discover, there's a deity playing with you, and that's not fair.
I don't know. What do you say?
You say, injustice! Gods among us! Hello and welcome to Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
I'm your evil Superman host, Madelyn.
I'm your unicorn lady host, Emma.
And thanks for tuning in to today's show. This week, we're talking about Injustice Gods Among Us. Say it.
Among Us.
Thank you. And Unicorn Overlord.
I think I've said this before, but sometimes when your joke goes on for like a long time, I lose track of what the question was.
Well, maybe you should be paying a little closer attention.
I probably should. You're right. I should be a better listener.
I love an elaborate setup.
Well, shall we talk about injustice?
Gods Among Us?
Among Us? Can't do that every time.
Injustice, Gods Among Us, is a 2013 fighting game in the Injustice series, the first game in the Injustice series, which basically is DC Comics Mortal Kombat. Except it's not the game where it is literally DC Comics Mortal Kombat.
Yes. So, while not part of the Injustice series, I do think that the Mortal Kombat versus DC universe, or whatever that one was called, is sort of like, was like a precursor to this, essentially. They made that, and then they closed midway, except for the one studio that eventually turned into NetherRealm. And then, I think after they made another Mortal Kombat, they made this. So, you know, they started off with a clear crossover thing, and then went, what if we just did Dark DC?
What if?
There you go. And all of DC listened. They're like, what if we did do Dark DC?
What if?
They're really feeling it at the time. Man of Steel also came out in 2013.
Big year for darkness.
Yeah. There is a bit of, it feels, Injustice does feel a little Snyder-esque, I might say.
Wow.
You know? It's got that
Snyderian.
Old Snyder. Whether that's a
some might
positive
say.
or a negative thing.
So yeah, as Emma said, developed by NetherRealm Studios, published by Warner Brothers Interactive Entertainment, came out for the PS3, the Wii U, LOL, and Xbox 360. You have to say LOL after the Wii U. The actual name of the system is the Wii U, LOL.
Yeah, it's true. It's on the
They did release an expanded edition for PS4 and Vita and Windows that following November. And then a mobile version. Both of the Injustice games have like mobile versions that came out later.
And an arcade cabinet.
Yes. Which is fitting. Suitable.
Yeah.
I feel like this predates the true heights of Marvel Mania, this game.
Well, I feel like we've asked this recently, and when did Iron Man come out?
Pretty sure 2009.
Wasn't Avengers also 2013?
That seems plausible to me. Let's find out. Well, Iron Man is 2008, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Avengers movie. 2012.
2012. So, not really, right?
I don't mean predate so much as like before it was clear that Marvel had like absolutely 100% bodied DC. How about that?
Sure, but I mean the Man of Steel Snyder stuff was sort of DC attempting to respond to Marvel,
Yes.
right? And there wasn't really, they hadn't Marvel hadn't really stepped into video games yet. There were the interesting Spider-Man games. I think were already out. Spider-Man Web of Shadows or whatever. So in some ways they beat them to the punch here a little bit. Although I guess there was Marvel vs. Capcom maybe already. So maybe that's what Mortal Kombat versus DC was trying to respond to too. Maybe DC has just always been behind.
Comic book based fighting arcade games, right? So
sure, yes. But I mean, in terms of like pushing it for the mainstream, right?
Yes, that's true. I can look up the release date of Marvel vs. Capcom, but I meant that I guess I don't know. Like Injustice gets good reviews. Right, it sells well, and that feels like something that I would not expect of a game like this released now.
Oh no, but I just mean I think that people's I don't even think that has to do with Marvel. Maybe, yeah. I think there's their the own exhaustion for like the dark, like take on superheroes too, right?
Yeah.
Like, did anybody like Batman v Superman? If you're out there, tell me your argument.
Well, but this game is still sort of building on the momentum of like the Batman movies, you know, that we all did like.
Sure. I just mean that it in itself is an interesting artifact because I think in a way it does represent that shift in how DC was attempting to present itself to mainstream culture. And one that, despite Injustice getting relatively good sales and good reviews, one that would eventually fail them pretty hard.
I think that is an accurate assessment. Marvel vs. Capcom, by the way, the first one came out in 1998. But there was a 2012 Marvel vs. Capcom Origins. Mm-hmm. Or Marvel vs. Capcom 3 in 2011. So, similar timing on some of it. Anyway, as Emma says, this game is dark. Right? We start this off with like, all right, Superman? Superman, that widely beloved dude? He's evil now. He got tricked into killing pregnant Lois Lane by the Joker and destroying Metropolis, which is like the DC city, right? With a nuclear bomb. Which, by the way, is more or less also the plot of Trine 5, in case... But, like, we'll save that.
Wait, the wizard kills his wife?
Well, no. She leaves him, but they do blow up the world.
Phew. I was like, what happened to the twins who could do fireballs?
The triplets, we will talk about them next week.
Okay.
Don't worry. This could have been the plot of Trine 5, maybe. Yeah, how about that? But understandably, he gets mad about that. Sad. Yeah. And then becomes evil.
He kills the Joker. You said that already. Did you say that already?
I don't think I said that, but yes, he also decides to kill the Joker. He very purposely
kills the Joker.
Which is not something that Superman generally does.
Yes. There's a whole prequel comic that they released for this as well. That sort of went into the descent of Superman as well as setting up some other plots. There's like a subplot with Green Arrow and Harley Quinn becoming BFFs, which I think is funny. But people weren't super... Even back then, I think people weren't super big fans of he murders his pregnant wife, Lois Lane, plot point. Which apparently the comics artist was like, I tried to make this as painless as possible in my adaptation of it. So he also didn't seem very impressed with the plot line. But essentially, it's just like a very convenient shortcut to get evil Superman.
So this happens, by the way, in a parallel universe because it's a comic story, so that's required. In the real universe, Batman is able to like stop this from happening, basically. But like basically alternate universe Batman is able to summon like some members of the Justice League from the real universe or the main universe, whatever, because Superman has turned into a total tyrant and Batman is like, this guy's killing people and he's a tyrant, we need your help. Then they all take drugs so that they can be strong enough to fight Superman, which is apparently something that people who are into DC Comics feel very strongly about.
He also accidentally summons the Joker, too, I believe. So,
well, you know.
You win some, you lose some.
Feels like the story of Batman's life.
Yeah, I think the other thing that some people who were anticipating this game were kind of disappointed by was, like, the bringing of, like, standard versions of the heroes over as well, which is something that they dropped in the sequel. It was just set within the Injustice universe instead.
It really was interesting to me, though, just to circle back for a minute, that almost every article I read about this was like, don't worry, they explain how Batman is strong enough to fight Superman.
Why not? Why can't he? Don't you just get some kryptonite and then it's like, it's fine? Isn't that how Superman works?
I think so, but probably in a world where he is like the all-powerful tyrant, I can't imagine that kryptonite is that easy to get your hands on.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. I think the end is like they use like super kryptonite on him. Spoilers, yes. I guess, but...
You know, I was going to say the story doesn't matter, but people like the story in this game, mostly. So it's a fighting game where people do really kind of like the story. Anyway, reading the synopsis of this really did hit home for me that I like... Unlike the Marvel superheroes, where I feel like this is probably less true now that they've gotten into so many kind of more obscure ones. But unlike the Marvel superheroes, where I could like tell you a little bit about them and maybe some plot that they engaged with at some point in some comic when I read their names in the synopsis, the DC superheroes, I'm like, I recognize that name. And that's about all I got.
See, I watched... 5 seasons of Green Arrow on the CW, and 4 or 5 seasons of The Flash on the CW, and 2 or 3 seasons of Legends of Tomorrow on the... not Legends of Tomorrow. Maybe just Legends of Tomorrow.
I think it is Legends of Tomorrow.
Oh, you're right. 2 or 3 seasons of Legends of Tomorrow on the CW, so I know some obscure DC characters, but only in the context of how they were in the CW show, really.
See, I could tell you something about The Flash, because I watched a bunch of that, but that's it. And is The Flash even in this? I'm not even sure he is.
Yes, he's also evil, I believe.
Oh, good.
I think. He's at least in the prequel comic being evil, I believe.
Anyway, if you lost track of this, though, this is a fighting game. So, really what you're doing is Mortal Kombat style, although not quite like Mortal Kombat. Again, shocking and revolutionary, apparently, the slightly different button configuration of this. Which I don't mean that in a derogatory or sarcastic way. I mostly mean it in a making fun of myself way.
Yeah.
I just feel like I read, like, all these people who are like, oh, it's crazy that instead of, like, they have a different button for light, medium, and heavy attack, and, like, there's no block button, and there being no block button is, like, the best thing ever, was written into multiple reviews, and I was like, that's so crazy.
It is quite different, right?
Yes, certainly. I just, a window into a genre that I don't engage with very much.
I know enough about fighting games to know that it's quite different not to have a block button. I do think that would change the gameplay of it quite a bit, right? There's not any, like, you can't just turtle up.
Well, you can still block. It's just like you have to, like, move back or something instead. It's like a directional.
Well, so it's like dodging, essentially.
I think so.
If you're moving.
Yeah. No, I don't mean to get, again, non-derogatory, just like me reading this going like, wowza, imagine playing enough of these to have like intense feelings about button configuration.
You know, it's like when I play an action game that has the attack buttons on the shoulders and also at the same time an action game that has them on the face buttons. So, I get it.
Yeah.
You know?
But they also have, there's just like a lot of things that are apparently like little tweaks, right? I didn't really realize that, I mean, I've played Mortal Kombat before, but I had not really stuck in my brain that the environment is not interactable at all in a Mortal Kombat game. It is just decorative. And here, apparently, the arenas make a big difference. There's like items and stuff, and there are some characters that are more gadgety characters and have to use those items more. And it's like, oh, all these little nuances that would be totally lost on me.
The second game even has like a light RPG system
they get armor
to it. Yeah. Yeah, you get armor and different costumes, and I guess you can level up a little bit or something, was my impression from reading through it a little. There was some critique of that, of like, well, one, it had microtransactions, because of course it did. It was around that time.
I mean, like, cosmetic only, right? But
yeah. Yes. But yeah, the drops were random in terms of what you got when they dropped. So there wasn't really any way to control, like, I want costumes for my favorite characters, please. And so if you really wanted to control your character, they were trying to guide you to pay money a little bit.
There was some interesting, like, around, I read a couple of sort of like funny articles around the second game. Apparently when they sort of released a demo or some preview images for the second game, which came out in 2017, a lot of people made fun of the faces of the female superheroes. They just looked really bad. They were too shadowy. And they did improve those by launch. But the designer who was working on this did an interview for an article with Vice. So, like, a lot of interesting stuff about how they improved that, right? Like, they improved the lighting, like, made a better facial rig, did some facial scanning. Like, interesting. But also just apparently a lot of, like, asking the team's wives, like, how to do makeup.
I mean, yeah. That makes sense to me.
Just, like, he was like, my wife really helped me understand this. Also, she's really critical, so that was helpful.
It's good to, you know, if you know that you don't know something, you should ask somebody who knows. There you go.
Better myself.
Find the information you need. Don't invent it.
There was also an interesting article on Vice or Waypoint or whatever. I can keep track of what it was called at the time of publication by Yusuf Cole about how these games sort of present this dichotomy between Superman representing the death penalty and Batman who has his like no-kill policy but then is totally laissez-faire about throwing people into horrible prisons. And how ultimately those two political outlooks are not so different. But this game presents it as like this clash of ideals that I thought was an interesting take.
I mean, that's just sort of the unfortunate... It's hard to do that with superheroes, right? Because ultimately... unless you really are working for it, ultimately the role they take in whatever story they're in is that they're a cop of some sort, right? Just what degree of cop, I guess, changes. And that is something, like, if you go through superhero stories, you either have to, like, reckon with that or just accept it and move on from it.
Is there a way to create a mutual aid superhero? Like, not really.
I don't know. I don't have enough of a encyclopedic knowledge of comics to tell you that. I mean, probably. I don't think it's that hard. You just don't throw them in jail. There you go. Figure it out.
I feel like it would be difficult to match the stakes of any of this, though.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why Batman throws all his villains in Arkham Asylum is because they're not the scale of villains that you find in the real world, and also they need to escape eventually so that they can return.
It's better to not even really think of it as a real jail.
Batman. Yeah. Exactly.
Like, there's not a trial. And also, it doesn't seem to be able to hold them.
Yeah.
So it's really more just like a clubhouse.
They've been banished to the Shadow Realm, briefly.
That is what happens to Superman in one of these, basically.
Yeah. When you don't know what to do, you just send him to the Shadow Realm.
The games were also briefly banned in the United Arab Emirates and Kuwait. Unclear why. Might have been gods, plural, in the title. Some speculation that is not religiously appropriate. Might also have been some costumes. I don't know what it would take to get me interested in playing a fighting game.
There's the sort of Yakuza style story mode in Street Fighter 6, apparently. So
there's a Yakuza style story mode in Street Fighter 6.
Yeah, you make your character and you like run around the city and fight people on the street and meet colorful characters and stuff.
But that's like not even really a fighting game then.
Well, you fight them in fighting game arena.
Okay, I guess.
But yes, they tacked on like a little like sort of more like action game story mode onto Street Fighter.
Well, if that's the big surprise that RGG has in store for me in September, then like, okay, I guess.
They probably should make a fighting game.
Probably. People would like that.
Yeah.
We'll come back to this if they announce it.
Well, shall we talk about the unicorns?
Why is it called that?
Because you are the unicorn overlord. That's why.
No, what?
You get the ring of the unicorn.
Oh, okay. Okay. I was like,
and
I can't figure out where unicorn comes in here.
You're the rightful king, so you're the unicorn overlord. Whatever.
I was just gonna say, what a just unhinged thing to title your game.
I don't think it's that weird, to be honest. But I don't think most game titles are that weird, so...
I feel like the word unicorn... I don't know. It just makes you think of things that this game is not.
What do you mean? What does it make you think of?
I don't know. Not real-time strategy.
What about unicorns doesn't make you think real-time strategy?
What about unicorns does make you think about real-time strategy? I recognize that they are ponies and not unicorns mostly, but unicorns makes me think of My Little Pony.
Why?
Because, like, that it just does.
Okay.
Or, like,
Do
Barbie.
Horses, in general, Pegasi, if they've been ruined for you forever, they're just My Little Ponies now?
Horses have not been ruined for me, although Horse Overlord would be worse. So, let's not put that word in my mouth.
Okay.
But, it's just, yeah. It's an interesting title. That's all. It's a somewhat bold title.
Sure. So Unicorn Overlord.
It could be, to circle back to like our horse games.
Yeah.
Thing. Unicorn Overlord could be a good title for like a ranch sim.
So true.
Like Zoo Tycoon. Like Zoo Tycoon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I get it.
But Zoo Overlord would have been a nice alternate title there.
Anyway, Unicorn Overlord is
not any of those things.
Game release from Vanillaware, published by Atlas, like most of their games are, for the Switch, PlayStation 4 and 5, and Xbox Series X and S. They have no plans to bring it to PC. Again, like most of Vanillaware's games, they just do not like releasing their games on PC for whatever reason.
Here's another just like Madelyn's grumpy about names thing.
Oh my god.
Vanillaware is also kind of a bad company name.
Why?
Because it makes it sound like you make boring mobile games.
It was apparently originally called Pudagudu. Do you like that better?
This Vanillaware is probably more Western friendly.
So I say it's the latest game, but it actually, its original concept was pitched to Atlas in 2014, and it wasn't like full scale development going from then till now. It seems like a lot of team members got pulled off at various times to work on the Odin Sphere remake and 13 Sentinels instead. So I think there were just periods of time where they stopped working on this, and then came back to it.
Vanillaware is only about 50 people, I think. So
yes,
that
they are a
makes
small
sense.
company. Yeah. This was made by Takafumi Noma. I believe their main guy is George Kamitani, but different person led development on this one. So it's a real-time tactical strategy game, as Madelyn said. I saw a lot of interviews that was like, oh, all your games are always so different, but there's a couple of action games, I guess, but they mostly make either action games or some form of real-time strategy. So it's not that different. Their last game was a real-time strategy game.
I think what they're trying to say is that 13 Sentinels was very story-based, and this one is less that.
Fair. Yeah. I played 13 Sentinels, and then I played Grim Grimoire once more, and then I played this, and they're all variations of real-time strategy. So they like that. They like doing that. But it is a somewhat rare genre, I think, coming out of a Japanese developer. It's more of a Western genre in terms of well-known games in that. So it is interesting. Anyway, you play as Elaine, who is the rightful ruler of Fevrith. I don't know.
The rightful unicorn overlord.
Yes, I think the continent is Fevrith. I don't remember what. I played this. I don't remember what his country's name is.
The empire is the Zenoiran Empire.
Yes.
Zenoiran Empire.
Yes. So when Elaine's a child, an evil guy rises up to try and take over this whole continent and ends up killing Elaine's mother while he and his paladin guy, Joseph, flee into an island where Elaine gets raised and gets friends, and Joseph does the work of raising a resistance on the main continent.
Kind of like Batman in Injustice.
Yes, they're just like Batman and Alfred. Exactly. So the time comes where, it's time for Elaine to go and lead the Liberation Army and take back his country. And so that's what he does, and that's what you do. You go and you sort of slowly recapture various towns on the map. You do sort of one country at a time to sort of free them from the grip of the Zenoiran Empire. And each of these is there's main sort of battles, and then you can do a bunch of liberation quests and side quests that are smaller scale battles to sort of free a town. You also can do a lot of roaming on the world map between these towns, so you can deliver supplies to them, and when you deliver supplies to them, they are restored and you get some points and possibly some new features open up. Like you can go eat at the tavern and see Vanillaware's famously beautiful food animated.
They love their food.
They love to draw food. That is also common point among all of their games, is they sure love to draw food.
I did read one thing. They were talking in an article about how at first they were probably all these people would eat porridge, so probably the food should just be them sitting around eating porridge. But then they asked the guy at the studio, Shigetake, and he was like, no, it's gonna be beautiful. And the food, the dishes are different depending on the region in the game.
Well, yeah, every city you go to has different food at it if they have a tavern. All the big cities have a tavern that you can unlock by delivering supplies, and then there's different foods at each one that you essentially use to build rapport among your units. They have a very sort of small support system, I guess, where you can have little conversations with the unit. I might have missed the tutorial. It wasn't really clear to me whether that gave them battle benefits. I assume it did.
It seemed like it did, reading about it.
Yeah, so that's basically Unicorn Overlord. It doesn't get very much more complicated than that in the plot.
Except that it's all very... Oh, plot-wise. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the way that the battle system works, and what's different about this one versus some of their other real-time strategies, is it uses the Final Fantasy XII Gambit system, where you set up your units to sort of automatically fight. So before a battle, you have a certain amount of like active points and passive points, and then you learn skills based on like your class and your promoted level, and different weapons and accessories can have skills on them. And then you set up the order of when they should use these skills, right? So you put the ones they want them to use more frequently at the top, or like check that first. It's like coding, essentially, right? Like if this, then this, else this, right? So if you want someone to only use an attack in a very specific situation, like if there's a certain amount of people in the front row of an enemy unit, if there's a certain type of unit there, if you're the first action, if you've been damaged or not, stuff like that. There's a whole bunch of like scenarios you can build out to try to make sure to set the logic of each of your units to the way that you want it to. And each unit, you don't just control one unit at a time. You have like little armies, essentially, that you can upgrade the amount of units that are in that little army, as well as unlock more little armies that you can deploy onto the field. So you can have up to 5 units in a single little army, and they all have their own active and passive points, and different types of units are better against other different types of units, like, some are bad against archers or good against archers or whatever. Plus you can equip weapons that maybe change what the size of stuff they can do. It's very cool for like the first 20 hours is my opinion of it. And then it becomes impossible to experiment anymore, or you're spending like 2 hours before a battle setting up all of your little units. Was my experience for it. So I just stopped like changing anything and was just brute forcing my way through each of the levels by the end.
Describing it as like coding really makes it sound super fun.
Well, it is. I think it really is fun conceptually. I like I said, I saw a lot of comparisons to Final Fantasy XII system, which makes me want to go play that because I like the concept of setting it up. It's just when you're dealing with like 12, I think by the end I had 12 armies with 5 people each in them, that I had to set up so that they were interacting with each other correctly. And you can't save any of them, right? You can't be like, I want to save this so that I can try something else, but if I don't like it, I can just go back.
Would be a nice quality of life.
Yeah. The menus, the art's beautiful, music's great, the food looks yummy. The menu design is really bad. It's really hard to navigate.
Oh, that's a shame for a game that is all about menus.
Yeah. Like the inventory system, especially once you start getting like a gajillion different things, it's very hard to find like what you're looking for to set on a unit. And again, once you're dealing with like 100 of them, it feels like 100 of them, it just becomes exhausting for me, at least. I know there are a lot of people who were really into this and really liked like sort of the setup, and I did for most of it. It was just by the end when I was like, oh my god, is this game going to end? Does this game have an end?
Yeah, I know. I almost got the demo, and various life things got in the way, but I was also reading the demo is like very much like it's a slow tutorial.
Well, it's a timed demo.
Right.
It gives you like
5 hours, I think it's
5 hours, yes. So you can do whatever you want in those 5 hours. I didn't find it very slow to get started, to be honest. For what it's worth. You do like one intro battle, and then a second one that sort of goes over, a couple of different other things, and then that's it. You're kind of let loose after that to do whatever you want.
Well, this game got like pretty good reviews overall, I'd say. Good reviews overall. People are sort of unimpressed with the story, mostly. But their fastest selling game to date, easily. And the director of Final Fantasy Tactics is like their biggest ambassador.
Yeah.
He's out there being like, shut up about my new games. Just go play this. Calm down, literally, he says on Twitter.
People are hoping for a Final Fantasy Tactics re-release of some sort, I believe.
Clearly.
Yeah.
He's not going to do it, though. He's like, just go play Unicorn Overlord.
Yeah, I found what most of, I sort of felt similarly to this as like triangle strategy a little bit, in that I had fun with it, right? Because I like strategy games, but it didn't really do anything for me at the same time.
Yeah, I agree. Triangle strategy was too long.
Yes, this game is also too long. I guess you could do less of the side quests and liberation quests if you wanted to, but I felt like I like to sort of keep my units up. I sort of needed to, or they block you sometimes from getting to the next area, so you have to do some of them. So there's a little bit of that, because I think I did every battle on the map, plus all of the extra stuff. I did really like, you can like encounter like little mini boss fights like on the field, where the idea is to set up a unit that's like perfect for this one particular enemy, which again would be nice if I could save things before doing that. But I did like the sort of puzzle element of that, of like figuring out how to make the right unit to take this one down.
This game also had some of the usual boring controversy around its localization.
Yes. It's quite it is quite punched up, right? They're talking very sort of traditional swords and sorcery type of style in the English dub, which isn't necessarily reflected in the Japanese directly, but it's the style they were going for in the game. I think you could probably make some arguments about their use of formal versus casual Japanese in certain places. I didn't look too deep into it. I try not to these days. I feel bad about it because I think,
like, who cares? Like, especially here where it feels like what they're arguing about is not like content that got changed. It's just like they decided they were gonna do some kind of like high fantasy sort of style, basically.
Yeah.
Like,
makes reading harder, and gamers don't like to read.
Gamers don't like reading.
But yeah, I feel bad because in some ways it's an interesting conversation, I think, right? But it's just so impossible to have an interesting conversation about localization choices now, because people aren't talking about it for the correct reasons.
Yeah. I know, I saw that, I like rolled my eyes. I was like, oh god. Do we even have to read this? Another funny anecdote is that apparently again, they ran out of money before it was done, and the CEO was like fronting it personally.
They're always running out of money. So I'm glad it did sell well. I do think Vanillaware is a very interesting developer and a very like healthy kind of developer to have in the video game scene, even if I generally feel like their games are only okay for me. Continues the trend of like, you can so there is a system in this where you get like this thing called the Ring of the Maiden, that's like the partner to your unicorn ring, the Ring of the Unicorn, whatever it's called, and you can give it to anybody that you want, so it does not have to be a maiden. I gave it to BFF Lex because I thought it was funny. Because like, you have to do all the supports with Elaine and that person to be able to give the ring, but none of them are very romantic. And then the last scene, I watched a couple of them with some of the girls that I had just because I was curious. And it's sort of like a gamble roll of like, they all made me feel a little gross. I don't know if I can put my finger on it. Not like in I don't know, like just sort of in a nebulous way. It made me feel a little like, ugh, I don't like it. But yeah, it continues the tradition of, in my opinion, they try to put romance in the games, and nobody at Vanillaware can write romance very well. It's just there's nothing really wrong with the story too. It's just very basic, right? It never zags, essentially. What you see is what you get. And one of them was talking in an interview. They did do a bunch of interviews for this game beforehand. And I think this was like a Games Radar summary of Noma saying that they wanted to make the story and gameplay balance into something the player would walk away with a definitive feeling of it being fun. Mm-hmm. And I think that is very much like why the story is the way that it is, right? They want you to be having fun with the gameplay, right, and playing around with the characters and not worry too much about what's happening.
It's just so tough. I feel like so many of these games, the story is not really there. Well, at the same time, we have this, continually more and more and more popular, like, book tradition of wide-ranging kind of fantasy politics stories, right? I mean, Game of Thrones being the most obvious one, but, like, any of the Brandon Sanderson stuff or blah, 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 any of the things in that realm. And it's like, why can't somebody take that and bring it here?
I mean, I think that's why a lot of people like Final Fantasy Tactics. Triangle strategy, whether you enjoyed the story enough or not, does have, like, politicking happening.
No, it certainly does. I just didn't think it did a very good job.
Sure. But I don't, like, I would not equate the goals of Triangle Strategy and Unicorn Overlord, right? Like, Triangle Strategy has factions and people scheming and stuff like that. Unicorn Overlord is very straightforward. You go to a country, you free country. You go to other country, you free country. You go to other country, you free country. You go to the capital, you free capital. That's about all you do.
Fair enough. I just mean to say that for me personally, whether like reading this one or like any of the Fire Emblems, any of these turn-based or real-time strategies that are functionally like you're an army and something's going on. I feel like we have a lot of examples in literature of that being done in ways that are like effective in a grand sweeping way that you would engage with over the course of many hours. And then these just don't seem to do that. For me. So maybe try to get George R.R. Martin to take a break from whatever he's doing. That isn't
he already worked on a video game.
Wants him to be doing.
He already worked on a video game. He's already done that.
Yeah, but like in like a lore way. Like try to make.
I don't think. I don't think Game of Thrones would translate very well into video game form.
I don't think it would either.
So I think the problem is perhaps games kind of needing to have like a central protagonist, right? Or at least a central squad, right? Because you have to be, there has to be some sort of unit building if we're going with like, this is a strategy game, right? And so if you're constantly switching between perspectives, and Triangle Strategy tries to do this by just having scenes, right, that are away from your main army. Fire Emblem Three Houses attempts to tell 4 different stories in one, and that's kind of how they try to handle it. And perhaps bite off
Traveler, Emma.
Bite off more than they can chew. Octopath Traveler is not the same thing at all.
I
know. Game of Thrones, stories at least overlap with each other.
I know.
But what I'm saying is, like, those are very much like, oh, we're checking in here, we're checking in here. There's various characters that we're following over the course of those things. And that doesn't fit very well with a video game structure of needing to, like, have progression, right, in the gameplay. So I think there's some challenges there. And, like, Three Houses is probably the way to approach it, theoretically, to fix that problem. But then you chain yourself to writing an extremely huge game, right? Yeah. And that can be very hard to balance and make sure everything feels good in all those different areas of your very huge game.
Well, on that note, is it time for my, I don't know, real-time strategy hero squad battles?
Oh, if I can I'll make one more complaint about Unicorn Overlord.
Please.
So you get a lot of characters in this game, like so many characters, so many, too many. So I was doing fine, through the first part, and then I went and freed the first country, and I was like, okay, all these characters, they feel distinct, they feel different. There's the guy, there's the storyline that's just stealing the Joshua and Natasha storyline from Fire Emblem 8, I've got it, I understand. And then we went to the elf place, and oh my god, all those elves look the same. Sorry.
Oh, the elf place.
The elf place. What did you
Not
think I said?
Alf.
Alf. Yeah, Alf is in this game. Did you know?
That's so crazy. He's the Unicorn Overlord.
No, all the elves. There are so many blonde archer elves. You get like 5 archers in a row.
Sure.
And then you go to the beast place, and that's fine. Then you go to the angel place, and there's so many blonde angels doing the same role in battle. It's like, how do I pick between these two? Blonde number 1 and blonde number 2.
That's a little racist of you, gotta say.
Sorry. There are some dark elves. The dark elves all look more different from each other than the non-dark elves. So,
well, that's something.
I mostly use them. They also weren't all archers. So, there you go.
Okay, great. So our game has to have too many archers.
Yes,
Got
that's a key thing, is very much having too many archers.
Oh, that's Marvel, though, right? I was like, Hawkeye everywhere, but that's Marvel.
Green Arrow, Madelyn. Come on.
Duh, of course.
Oliver Queen.
Sorry, I first thought was the bad thought. Yes, great. So like 17 Green Arrows.
Green Arrow is a pretty significant character in Injustice too. So I think he's key.
Okay.
Like a Green Arrow game.
Yeah, I do think we have to go in the direction of it being a real-time strategy type game. I think that a like dark fighting game about like a fantasy world doesn't feel like it does anything.
What if it's a real-time strategy game, but like when you enter battle, it's a fighting game? Does that sound fun?
I'm interested in that, and I'm also doing the thing that I feel like you do to me sometimes. It's just like, that actually appeals to no one.
Okay. So you have like big main units, right? And also small units, right? So you have your units that are like centered around like one of your characters, sure. And then
Batman,
units that
Superman,
are just like random people, right? Your bat gadgets or whatever. So if you run into one of the small units, or if your small unit runs into something else, there's just like a normal sort of battle. Like, what's the stats versus the other stats? What happens there, right? Mm-hmm. We're defending, we're attacking. But if one of your big units runs into one of the enemy's big units, then we have sort of a climactic showdown between your 2 units. In fighting game style.
I like that. I still do feel the need to register that real-time strategy and fighting games are both.
We could also maybe just make it like presentation wise.
Oh, sure.
Because that's what Unicorn Overlord does, right? You can watch sort of the battle animations take place to see what happens. So in this, there's sort of a more like they're squared up, right? And then you sort of get like maybe there's like some opportunity for like a quick time event, sort of button presses.
Yeah.
Mario and Luigi style or whatever.
Mario and Luigi style.
To sort of make it a little bit more active and sort of fighting gamey. But yeah, like sort of a cinematic, like your big units are clashing. Maybe you're literally like the Titans of this fantasy world.
Oh, so this is not DC. This is Fantasy World.
Oh, I didn't know you were siding. I've lost Green Arrow in this. Green Arrow's also there. You're right.
I was imagining it was like, oh yeah, when Batman and Superman, like when it's just their minions fighting, who cares? But when Batman and Superman fight, you know.
Yeah. But just like you have your god figures, right?
Yeah.
Which could be, we could make it DC, or it could be more like fantasy if we wanted to.
Well, the problem, of course, is that I don't know enough about DC lore to be able to come up with a thing that puts them in like a conquest situation.
There's an anime airing this season called Suicide Squad Isekai.
Right.
Where they send the Suicide Squad to a fantasy world to win a war. I just remembered that.
There it is.
There it is. They beat us to the punch.
I can't believe it. Literally, I can't believe that. There is an Injustice animated film, too, by the way. Okay, well, I can't beat that. I can't beat, like, Superman
gets hit by a truck and then reincarnates.
Yeah.
In a new world.
Has to fight a blue-haired, like, you know, Fire Emblem protag.
Oh, I did discover really late that you can, like, recolor your units using some of your, like, I can't remember if it was your gold or your honors, which are, like, the two currency systems.
So that was the problem. You weren't supposed to have a bunch of blonde archers. They were supposed to look stupid. If
you really want to waste your money, you can recolor your favorite units if you so choose.
That's true about dyeing your hair in the real world, too. So,
yeah.
Realistic.
Yeah, there you go.
It's an investment.
Just blue-haired, remind me. Elaine is blue-haired in sort of the Fire Emblem tradition.
An homage. No, like pregnant Lois Lane emerges, and now she's a warrior. Now she's Superwoman.
There's already I guess it's Supergirl, so she's Superwoman.
Right, because she got killed by Superman, but now she's Superwoman in this new world.
Okay. Right, yeah, she died and reincarnated. That makes sense.
And that way it can be Injustice 3.
Yeah, that's probably what they're working on right now. They're gonna announce it soon, and we're gonna feel so stupid. Or so smart.
Imagine releasing a DC game now.
Like I said, they're releasing an isekai anime with the Suicide Squad. They could do whatever.
Suicide Squad is the only part of that brand that is, like, alive. You know?
It's just really Harley Quinn is holding the whole thing together.
Genuinely. When is the Lady Gaga movie coming out?
I didn't know there was going to be a Lady Gaga movie.
Oh my god, the one Joker 2 that's a musical.
Oh, right. I don't know.
Isn't Lady Gaga in that? Maybe that's
Yes, totally... I think it is Lady Gaga. Yes.
Yeah.
You're correct. I just forgot that was happening because I don't think about it, I guess.
Well, on that somebody beat us to the obvious mashup note, thank you for listening to another episode of Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
We probably should have taken that to the war room and gotten all the ideas out and then come back.
We really should have, yeah.
Oh well. Could you think of a better mashup? Where do you fall on the... Do you think the Marvel fighting games are better or the DC fighting games are better? Would you call that game a Snydervania? Have you played Unicorn Overlord? And do you agree with me that the words Unicorn Overlord do not make you think of like a very complicated menuing real-time strategy game? If you have thoughts about this or anything else that we talked about this week, hit us up on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Talk This Podcast. You can also visit our website, www.talkthispodcast.com, where you can read all about the show, check out the games in the hat, and read our blog featuring the long-running series Clickbait Boyfriend and Split Screen. But most importantly, if you enjoy the show, you ought to subscribe. We're on Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, TuneIn, Spotify, Pandora Podcasts, online and on the app, Overcast, Pocket Casts, anywhere you can find podcasts. Subscribe to Talk This. Next week is 6 weeks in gaming, I think.
Yes, you're right.
The long-awaited conclusion of Trine 5.
I'm very excited to hear how Trine 5 shakes out.
I know everyone's been waiting. The long-awaited, is there a new banger of a song in the new Super Monkey Ball?
I'm excited to find out.
I'll tell you after we record, but
Okay.
everyone else will have to wait until next week.
All right. 2 weeks from now, I really got to replace the games in the hat.
You do.
2 weeks from now, we'll be talking about the Banner Saga for our old game.
Uh-huh.
And for our new game, we'll be talking about Crow Country.
Another one of those indie games that all came out on the same day.
Yep.
So look forward to that. Crows and banners galore.
Heck yeah.
But listeners, that's our show. Thanks for tuning in. Emma, you got a smashing send-off?
This week, I hope that Superman doesn't murder you.